Well, thank you for staying with us on the AM show. And guess who just joined me? Bernice Abu-Baidoo Lansah. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you? Good morning to you all. Thank you so much for making time to be with us this morning. Hope you had a restful weekend. And we are back again, Benjamin and I. And, as you know, every morning bringing you the best stories with the best reactions from the best you can get in any area.
The most germane topics from the right people to address the issues. And this morning, we're delving into some of them. Before I bring in the guests, though, we're talking election 2024 and the role of the Ghana card. Interestingly, the vice president, touted it at an event. Next thing you know, the EC comes out seeking this instrument. The NDC has been up in arms. We've heard from former EC chair, Dr. Kwejo Afarejan. We've heard from the likes of Kofi Bento on the back of this same thing, saying it is not as though the Ghana card determined our citizenship. What do we do with it, even if it's going to be restricted for the 500,000 or so that are added up every year? We'll also be talking about our political parties and whether they are fit to even be called such in terms of what the law requires them to do. We'll see how that pans out, but we'll kickstart the discussion with Bobby Banson, a lawyer, and Dr. Osai Kwapong, a CDD fellow. Gentlemen, thank you for joining the conversation.
Good morning. Thank you for having us.
Is that Bobby?
That's Dr. Osai.
This is John.
Good morning, President. I'm here.
Okay, yeah, that is Bobby now. Thank you so much for joining. Bernice, how about we start from the issue of the Ghana card and the quick thoughts of our guests. So I'll start with you, Dr. Osai Kwapong, just to set the tone for the conversation. I'm sure you've been listening to us. When you listen to all the dynamics from a Protestant NDC, which says this is not the way to go, and others who raise that moot question about its guarantee of citizenship, and all the other things that we've been told so far, the responses from the EC. What do you make of that situation?
So, good morning. I think that there are two issues here.
Right.
So there's the citizenship question and eligibility to vote. So the Constitution does guarantee that fundamental right to vote, and it prescribes a criteria by which you become an eligible voter: 18 years, sound mind, Ghanaian citizen. Then there's the administrative question, right? Because constitutional provisions by themselves have to be enacted, right? They have to be given agency. So that agency then becomes the administrative part of it. And so how do we then translate your eligibility to vote into an administrative process that actually allows you to exercise that right? So that's when we also come up with all of these rules around registration, when you can register, where you can register, and with what you can prove that Ghanaian citizenship so that you can register to vote. I was on Newsfile over the weekend and Dr. Serbo from the EC was there. His submissions, I really understood his submissions. I think one of the questions that I raised though was that the idea of the Ghana card is a noble idea. The purpose for which we are building a national identification system is a very noble idea. My only concern is that between now and 2024, would we have built the system to a place where it can become the sole identification method for the continuous registration idea that EC wants to roll out?
So now that you raised the question, are you doubtful of that?
I mean, 2 years, if it's a continuous registration process, I am hopeful that it can be done. But one of the things that I have also raised is that you also have to build in certain unintended consequences or unanticipated events. So my question to the EC Director of Elections on Saturday on Newsfile was that, is it still possible, though, to put in certain exemptions, right? To say that, okay, produce a Ghana card, but in the event that due to whatever unanticipated circumstances that an eligible voter may face, are there other acceptable forms of identification that can be used to allow you to register in this continuous registration exercise? And my only reason for that is, until you've built the system fully to the point where it's that fully functional, sometimes we have to consider other methods. That's one. And even then, again, you cannot always anticipate what a potential voter is going to face. And therefore, are there other acceptable exemptions administratively that the EC can build into that? So that's my thing. I have no problem with requiring the Ghana card, but I think I would also say, can we put in certain exemptions, because you never know what situation a potential voter will face in trying to demonstrate that they want to be part of that exercise of their fundamental rights.
So this is just the foundational question. Let me, before I get to Bobby Banson, acknowledge Peter McMenu, former chairperson of the MPP and also chair of the National Elections Committee of the recent conference that was held. He joins us all the way from Kenya. He is also chairman of the MPP's Elections Committee, as I mentioned. Mr. McMenu, a very good morning to you. I believe it's morning there as well. Thank you for joining the conversation. Please, you would have to unmute, sir.
Good morning. Good morning to everybody.
Great. Thank you for joining. And let me quickly go to Bobby Banson for your brief take before we go to Peter McMenu, so we can get the Zoom right as well. So your fundamental understanding of this question, and maybe before Bernice comes in, apart from the issue of the Ghana card, could there be legal ramifications on this? Maybe I'm shooting it before, but give us your foundational thoughts, and then we'll look later at whether there could be legal tussles on the back of these allegations.
Well, good morning once again. I think that I agree largely, or associate myself largely with the submissions of Dr. Akakpo, except to add, for the purposes of this, your specific question, that
which one? Which one exactly?
No, whether there will be legal ramifications for this decision by the EC, particularly in the event that a person who has other means of proving he's a Ghanaian citizen meets the criteria in, I believe, Article 1 of the 1992 Constitution, and says that he's been disenfranchised not because of his inability to procure a Ghana card, but because of the National Identification Authority's failure to issue him with one, and that the EC claims that the date for the voters' registration exercise has passed. In my thought process, I've gone to look at the what it was before. I believe, and I'm happy that you have Mr. McMenu on the line. Over the years, or since 1992, there have always been another way of confirming someone to be a Ghanaian citizen, of being of sound mind and being 18 years and above, as far as the electoral registration processes are concerned. So that what I know for a fact is that you could walk into, or as part of the registration procedure with the EC, you could go there with somebody who is already on their books, and I think 2 people or so. And as long as those people confirm that you meet the criteria, you may be issued with the EC card, the voter's ID card, in the absence of any objection by any of the polling station agents. And so you ask yourself whether there was a mischief or there was a defect with this process that the Electoral Commission is seeking to cure with the introduction of the CI, which would mean that it's only the national ID card issued by the National Identification Authority that would be used. Now, if you look at the National Identification Authority Act, it says, I believe in section, is it 4? It says in section 4 that the authority, it's not section 4, but it says there's a provision in the Identification Authority Act, which says that the national ID card or the ID card produced by the NIA shall be used for all transactions which require identification. So that is a provision in the Act that says that the ID card produced by the National Identification Authority shall be used in all transactions which require identification. Now, unfortunately, the National Identification Authority Act does not define what transaction is. You'd have to look at other laws which may define what transaction is. The closest I could come to was the Electronic Transactions Act, which has a definition of transaction, which says that transaction means a transaction of either a commercial or non-commercial nature and the provision of information and e-government services. So the National Identification Authority Act says that the ID card produced by the National Identification Authority shall, which is mandatory, be used in all transactions which require identification. Now, transaction is not defined in that act itself. So by the canons of interpretation, as lawyers will call it, you'd have to look at other statutory interpretations, if there is none, before you go to non-statutory interpretations. And I found a statutory interpretation in the Electronic Transactions Act, which says that a transaction means a transaction of either a commercial or non-commercial nature and the provision of information and e-government services. Now, whether this is enough to situate the registration for the purposes of voting as a transaction to make the national identification card as the sole means of identification is something that a court of competent jurisdiction may have to interpret upon an application or upon an action commenced by somebody who deems it fit. And so like Bobby, I said, the interpretation of same may have to deal with whether or not there was a mischief with the current system of identifying persons for the purposes of eligibility for voting, which ought to be cured by the CI. So those are my initial comments.
So just a quick follow-up, Bobby. This is Bernice here. Mr. Bento says that he can see a long line of people going to sue the EC because of the no Ghana card, no vote policy. You have just suggested that someone may have to initiate the process of seeking interpretation to exactly what we want to do in all of this. So do you agree with him when he says, for example, that if anybody goes to court to sue the EC over this, they are likely to win?
I mean, I would not say they are likely to win. I think that is quite far-fetched. I mean, interpretation, seeking judicial interpretation or judicial remedy go either ways. I believe that it becomes an issue of what the practical situation can be. And listen, we've had the Supreme Court, I believe it was in one of the Abu Ramadan cases, where he sued the Electoral Commission. I've forgotten exactly what the subject matter was, but he was able to identify a default with the Electoral Commission processes since 1992 in respect of announcing presidential results or, doing some particular prescriptions in the Act. And the Supreme Court upheld his contention, but then refused the remedy to him because they said it would lead to a socioeconomic meltdown. I think that there was a way like that, and that for the purposes of maintaining the sanity of the system, they would not, even though they have concluded that the Electoral Commission has defaulted with those statutory prescriptions, they will not grant the remedies being sought for by, I believe it was Abu Ramadan. And so you'd see the Supreme Court taking, or a court taking the approach where they say, yes, it's not in all cases that we will give you what you want because the law requires you to. We would have to situate it in the context of our socioeconomic regime. And if the Electoral Commission is able to come out to say that these are the reasons why we believe that the national ID card should be, we have liaised with the National Identification Authority to make sure that between now and 2024, or between now and the time that we close the voters registration, we end the voters registration exercise, every person who would qualify to vote would be captured on their books. Then it makes it dicey. Mind you, the CI has been laid before Parliament. And so we expect that the parliamentarians who are the representatives of the constituents who may be affected adversely by the passage of this CI would be able to voice out the misgivings of their constituents. So if the parliamentarians sit down and allow this to become a law, then it makes it a bit trickier to have it set aside. I'm not saying that it is not possible. I'm saying that it makes it trickier because I'm told that it's currently at the committee stage where the members of parliament would have the right to invite the Electoral Commission to justify some of the provisions in the proposed CI. So if the Electoral Commission is able to justify some of the provisions and is able to show that they are able to liaise with the National Identification Authority, that between now and the time that the voters registration exercise is able to close, they will capture every person. Or they have a means of ensuring that every person who so qualifies will be captured. Then it becomes a matter of practical implementation of the CI.
I'm looking at this comment that has come through on our Facebook stream feed from one King George Obiniba that says, the national ID should be a long-term initiative to get all Ghanaians registered. It shouldn't be tied to any elections. Let me bring in Peter McMenu. Thank you, sir, for your patience. Of course, let me start off by congratulating you on a successful conference from weeks back. I don't think we've had the opportunity to speak. Congratulations on that. But kick starting the conversation from your end. The Ghana card. We know that not every Ghanaian who qualifies for it has it. We know about the millions that have been, registered, the millions who have received their Ghana cards, and the deficits in between, depending on where you're looking at, whether you're looking at figures from the chairperson of the NDC, or you're looking at figures from the EC, or even contemplating figures from the NIA itself. But the point is, we are not in a position where everybody who deserves to have the card has the card, at least as far as access is concerned. Are we ready then to use the Ghana card as a source document, especially for those rolling on to 18, and by extension, some would say, even those who are currently registered on the roster? What is your take?
Thank you very much. It looks to me we are looking at this discussion as if Ghana is now going to start a completely new voters registration. But that is not the case. I'm afraid, from my understanding, it is the continuous aspect of the registration. After all, we had elections 2.5 years ago with a register, and it is the continuous, that is those who have attained 18 years and above, and who have to be enrolled on the register for future elections that are being considered. And are we saying to ourselves that those in that group, the percentage, they cannot get registered at the national identification by the National Identification Authority before 2024? That is the question. For the next 2.5 years or so, they can't be registered by the National Identification Authority.
So the question, Mr. McMenu, is not that we're fully aware. Mr. McMenu, if I may, the question is not so much about those who are already registered, though there are concerns there. The question is about. Are we talking about? Yes. So the question is about the ongoing registration, and the point to be made is that in some constituencies, a lot of those who fall within this bracket, those who may be 15, 16 now, who just might qualify to vote in 2024. A lot of them are not registered. That is a problem.
Some constituencies. Name the constituencies.
So there is this constituency, I just forget. It's a member of parliament from the NDC, somewhere in the Volta region. Maybe my producers will furnish me with a name. But I think it's Agboja. I think it's Kwame Agboja governs. But he makes mention of the fact that in his constituency, those who are supposed to register within, the catchment group, only about 20% of them have registered. And that if this goes on, looking at the trend, those who have the Ghana card, if the trend continues, it could mean a clear disenfranchisement of those who are going to be voting in 2024. These are valid concerns, aren't they?
My brother, if you recall, in July 2018, the NDC issued a statement to their members not to get registered with the NIA. They did. And it's on record that they issued a statement.
You would have to remind me, I don't remember any such statement categorically telling their people not to register.
July 2018. I can give you the exact date. But July 2018, it was 23rd July, Monday. It was a Monday, 23rd July. They issued a statement by the General Secretary that it directs all members to boycott the Ghana card registration. So who goes out? Who goes out? And besides that, when they were in government, there was a big law in the registration process of the national identification. They didn't take the national identification as a priority. And in this modern world, identity is key to killing troubles, killing riots, killing all manner of terrorism.
So just to clarify, you're basically saying that if, for example, members of any opposition party, especially the NDC in this context, if their members are not registered, it is self-inflicted. It is based on what they put out right from the start. That's what you're saying.
Absolutely. Why did they issue that statement? Why did they issue that statement and come around?
But even before that statement, Mr. McMahon, is it not the case that all Ghanaians should be given the opportunity to register, regardless of any statement? And plus, just to make the point, you can't say that maybe everyone who voted NDC or was NDC still is NDC, or maybe all of those who were MPP still are MPP. I mean, people, switch and change from time to time in terms of their electoral opinion. So aren't we supposed to do the right thing and ensure that everybody who qualifies ought to get there? Because there seems to be, some have alleged, there seems to be targeting.
Let me ask you a question. Are the doors of the National Identification Authority shut to anybody? Are the doors shut? They
are not shut, but they've not been able to give cards to everybody who has attempted getting it.
The Identification Authority, not the Electoral Commission. Get to the National Identification Authority, not the Electoral Commission.
Mr. McMahon, Bernice here. So,
yes.
So we've seen with a recent issue about SIM re-registration, there appears to be a challenge for many Ghanaians who have already registered to get their Ghana cards. Some of them have the Ghana cards, but they've not been activated. And so they go to get their SIM cards re-registered, and they're told that it can't work. They need to go back to the NIA. And the NIA has told us what its challenges are. We have seen, we visited the El-Wak Stadium where there are long queues. There are people who participated in the mass registration exercise as far back as 2019 who still do not have their cards. We are told there were issues with coding. Considering all the problems we have seen with the implementation of the Ghana card as regards re-registering the SIM card, wouldn't it be okay, or wouldn't you agree with those who say that we should give ourselves more time to regularize the system, clear all the issues before we tie this to elections?
You and your colleague are fond of saying this that without pinpointing specifics. If you say more time, what time are you talking about?
So 2024, Mr. McMahon, please permit me. 2024 is just 2 years away. There are those who say, yes, so you asked for clarification, let me give it. So there are those who say that considering all the challenges we are seeing now with the SIM re-registration exercise, it appears that the system is not running as smoothly as we would want it to. So why do we want to pin this to elections, which is 2 years away, considering that we've not even settled all the backlog as far back as 2019. There are people who haven't received their cards. So let's give ourselves more time. When the system regularizes, then we can tie it to elections then. That is the suggestion by some. And I'm asking you, based on what we are seeing with the SIM re-registration, would you agree with people who say, well, it's okay to use the Ghana card as the only document to register for elections, but maybe we need to hold on a bit?
Bernice, I would not want you to compare SIM registration to the Electoral Commission's registration, because SIM registration, I know many Ghanaians have 2 or 3 telephones. So they have to register all the 3 telephones with the different service providers. Unlike Ghana Electoral Commission card, which is only one. So don't compare the two. If people are going to register their phones, which are 3 in number, and the Electoral Commission is asking you for only one registration, it's 2 different things.
Mr. Akakpo, I'm talking about problems with access to the cards. I'm talking about cards that have been issued but cannot be activated. I'm talking about...
I'm saying people are not able to activate because some of them have as many as 2, 3 telephones. Unlike Electoral Commission identity card for voting, which is only one. And these are for only new registrants, not the entire population. Mind you, it's only for continuous registration. But the SIM card registration was for everybody. So don't compare the two. The SIM card registration is for everybody who owns a telephone.
Mr. Akakpo, I'm not sure. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. It appears to be a back and forth, but I'm not sure we are on the same page here. I'm not talking about the numbers. I'm not talking about the numbers at the SIM re-registration centers. I am talking about cards that have been issued, and this is not about the person's SIM card not being activated. It is about the Ghana card not being activated, and so the person has to go to LWAC to have it activated. We are talking about people who have registered as far back as 2019 who do not have access to the card that will help them register with the Electoral Commission. And I'm saying that there have been, and yes, we have spoken to people who just don't want to participate in the process for their own reasons. And there are people who also have legitimate, genuine concerns. And I am saying that the elections is 2 years away from now. There are those who say elections are a big deal in this country. I mean, SIM re-registration affects one person, but determining who is going to lead us affects the entire nation. So there are those who are saying that, you know what, let's hold on. There appears to be issues. The NIA has problems. Some people don't have their cards, their activation issues. Let's give ourselves maybe the next election, not the 2024 one.
I am telling you that the Electoral Commission has issued a broad guidelines, and they take the roots for their guidelines. It's from the Constitution, which says the Electoral Commission shall make rules and regulations to govern its operations. They are not doing this out of anywhere, but from the Constitution. In the same Constitution, which says citizens must have the right to vote. I do not think that the NIA, who has produced over 15 million cards and still has some more cards lying idle for people to collect, should be targeted as doing the wrong thing or unable to do what the law permits them to do. We are in a country where people refuse to abide by simple rules until last minute. We are a people of last minute.
So you're blaming the people. Anyway, before you give an answer,
attendances to major issues.
Right.
For 1 or 2 reasons. I tell you, before December 2024, an opening is made in, let's say, November, October, September 2024. People will rush and go and get their cards. Okay. That's the same thing that into the national NIA and the SIM card registration you are talking about.
Okay, just hold for me, Mr. Baidoo.
Anyway, it cannot go on like that. There must be a cutoff point. And I'm telling you, as I sit here in Kenya, if you don't have national identity card, you don't vote. The same thing applies to Nigeria. Because these days, security has become a centerpiece of governance, that identifying citizens is critical.
I think we keep shifting the goalposts a bit, Mr. McMahon. It's not about, I don't think anyone is contesting identifying citizens or having a common platform to identify citizens. It's about the mechanisms in which this will be used when it comes to voting. But do hold for me.
July 2018.
Do hold for me, Mr. McMahon. Do hold for me. Let me bring in, I'll have more questions for you, but just hold for me, Peter McMahon. Let me bring in General Secretary of the NDC, Johnson Esiedun Ketia, who joins the conversation. Mr. Ketia, very good morning to you, sir.
Good morning, my brother.
Right. So you've heard Peter McMahon, chairman of the NPP's Elections Committee, former chairman of the party. But from your end, we've heard from Chairman Ofosu Ampofo, and he's made quite a number of statements. There is, however, something we glean from the CI that is to be tabled in Parliament. And of course, Parliament will eventually have to look at the different dynamics. But as you react to the fundamental problems the NDC has with this exercise, which is a rolling one, I'd like you to tackle the issue of the fact that there are two kinds of registers listed in the CI. That for the electoral area, and then that for the constituency. So two different ones to look at. So if you, within the electoral area, that catchment area, it consists of the voters register for the polling stations in the electoral area. When it comes to that concerning the constituency, it consists of voters registered on the electoral area within the constituency. Now, I bring this up because there has been talk by Dr. Afarijan, among others, that this, owing to our BVM system, likely would create a situation where we would have overvoting, bloating of, the ballot boxes, so to speak, ballot stuffing, among others, because this is going to allow people to vote on two different fronts or platforms. How do you react to that from the fundamental point of the NDC's take?
I'm not sure I get the point very well about these two voting systems that you are talking, or registration systems that you are talking about.
All right, so just for clarity, under the caption voters register in that CI that I am referencing, which we are all aware of, two kinds of registers are listed, namely an electoral area register consisting of the voters' registers of the polling stations in the electoral area. That is one. And a constituency register consisting of the voters' registers of the electoral areas within the constituency. So you can see that while we are talking about the electoral area and those in the catchment areas, there's also another one for the constituency which still captures these. Now, from the rhetoric that we've heard from Dr. Afarijan and others, this could lead to the stuffing of ballots. It could lead to overvoting by some unscrupulous people. Is this Is this an idea you subscribe to?
Or doesn't create two different registers. Registers are polling station based. And then the aggregate of polling station registers in an electoral area, when you put them together, they constitute an electoral area register. And when you put all the electoral area registers together, they form the constituency register. It is not as if there's going to be a separate register for constituencies and a separate.
So this is the point, respectfully, this is the point that is made, that, again, quoting, until such a time that the BVMs are configured to be interactive, his concern is that any of the two registers being used at the polling station on election day, either one of them, it opens the door more widely to two kinds of voting infractions, namely multiple voting and ballot stuffing. So I get your point. It's technically not two different registers. But the fact that the BVMs are not configured to register in this way, maybe specifically for polling stations and all of that, would mean that any unscrupulous characters could vote both ways. Is that not a concern?
No, because there are not going to be two registers. There is only one register. And it is not going to be as if one voting is happening at the electoral area level and another voting is happening at the district level or constituency level. Maybe you don't understand the point he's making. There has been an argument that if people hold, we can even do away with the voters register so that people can go to polling stations to go
with a Ghana card.
Go and vote with their Ghana card. Mm-hmm. And I hear Dr. Farijan making a point that unless all the BVDs are interlinked countrywide, if that system is deployed, then somebody can do multiple voting because the BVDs in the various electoral areas are not linked with each other. So you can go and vote in polling station A in one electoral area and jump to another constituency and vote. But if the BVDs are all interlinked countrywide, then it means that wherever you cast your vote, you will be marked as having voted. So anywhere else in Ghana where you go and try to vote, you will be denied. So that is the point that Dr. Farijan is making. But it is not about the fact that there could be two registers. That is not the case. But let me continue by saying that I'm enjoying the new the conversation with the new PRO of Electoral Commission, whom you are engaging this morning, Chairman McMahon. Because when you follow the conversation,
so you know his official position.
Come again.
I'm saying that is not his official position. You know his official position.
But that is the work he has tried to do this morning, because he's trying to defend the actions of Electoral Commission when indeed it is not his function to defend Electoral Commission at all. As a political party, if you are comfortable with what Electoral Commission is doing, say so. But you don't go and assign reasons why Electoral Commission is acting the way it's acting. It goes to put in credence that those who argue that MPP is in bed with Electoral Commission to put in systems that will favor MPP. You are giving them more evidence.
Is that not a bit of a stretch to simply say that once he subscribes to a certain line of thought, it means, they are in cahoots with the EC? Is that not a bit of a stretch?
No, I am saying that he is trying to defend the undefensible actions of the Electoral Commission. Because the Electoral Commission itself is not, using the argument that Chairman McMahon is using. For instance, he makes the point that he has heard that NDC has issued a statement calling on its members to boycott Ghana card registration. And because of that, if the NDC members are not registered, now who calls them? So he sent it. So you are admitting that those who have not been registered are NDC. And so they must suffer. I don't think that is the point that Electoral Commission is doing, because Electoral Commission cannot admit that those who have not been registered are NDC. And even though we are under obligation to organize a free and fair election, if we are aware that those who have not been registered are NDC, it is because of their fault. Let me go and do an election which will go against NDC. I don't think that is the point the Electoral Commission has been making. If that is the point, then it means that the Electoral Commission is clearly and knowingly going into an election in which he knows that one party will be disadvantaged. So I'm sorry that argument doesn't come in at all. When we argued with the NIA, when they were about to start with this registration, We proceeded to court and then told our members that whilst our case is pending, they should not assess the thing that we are arguing against in court. The matter has since been settled a long time ago. We have called our members to go and register. The point is that the registration itself is incomplete. So it has nothing to do with any instruction that we are given when our case was in court or not. So if you are arguing that it is because we have issued a statement like that in the past, that is why our members could not register. And so now you know that going into elections, those who are not registered are predominantly NDC. So let us proceed without them and go and do an election and call it free and fair. That is the argument that Peter McMahon is giving, and that is unfortunate. It shouldn't be coming from the mouth of a statesman. Then again, I heard him make a point that this registration is about continuous registration. There is nothing in the law which specifically says that this law is solely for continuous registration. If he has anything in the law, let him point it out. The law does not talk about continuous registration. It's talking about registration of voters. And indeed, the practice in this country has never been that there is a separate law for full registration and another law for continuous registration. It's always one law. So it is wrong for him to assume that this law that we are talking about is just exclusively for continuous registration. It is not the case.
Okay, so quite a number of issues that you've raised. Before I go back to Dr. Osai-Kwapong, in fact, before I bring in Dr. Osai-Kwapong for the second time, Peter McMahon, do you have any quick reactions to this? And I'll put that same question to you as well. Afarijan makes mention of the fact that, and I'm going back a bit, in previous times, as we see now, we've always had an electoral register that is polling station based. Polling station, that is where you vote. It's specific. In this instance, according to the CI, there are going to be two dynamics. One, each electoral area shall have a voters register consisting of the voters register of the polling stations in the electoral area. That is one. And two, each constituency shall have a register consisting of the voters' registers of the electoral areas within the constituency concerned. I don't know whether this is further clarity, but according to the esteemed former EC, he suggests that this could mean someone could vote at both places because there will be sort of a division of the register. I don't know whether you also feel the same way as Asiedun Ketia feels, and then you can quickly react.
I think Dr. Afarijan got it wrong.
He got it wrong.
Yes, he got it wrong, totally. The CI that was used during his era, CI 72, if you go in there, the electoral area register is made up of registers from the polling stations, just as Asiedun Ketia said. I mean, there's no difference between polling stations that make up an electoral area and an electoral area. They are the same. The polling stations that make up the electoral area, their register constitute the electoral area register. So where is the difference? This was changed to CI 91. And if you check CI 91, there's no way anybody can go from a polling station where he's registered and go to another polling station because his name is on the electoral area register. Mind you, the Electoral Commission conducts elections at the electoral area too for assembly members. Mind you, they conduct elections at the assembly level, so they must capture the polling stations that make up the electoral area. I don't see anybody going for one polling station and going to the other in the electoral area to vote.
We shall see whether we can get further clarity if we hear from the former EC chair. Maybe he's saying something that we've not averted our minds to. But on to any quick reactions you would have per the points made by Asiedun Ketia in terms of the rolling registration.
Is that he should go and equip his people to go and register at the National Identification Authority, the NIA.
You think that is the solution?
But they have to be registered by the NIA. That is the solution before they can come to the Electoral Commission. So my advice is that he should whip them to go and register. Hitherto, he had whipped them not to register, and now he must whip them to go and register. Period.
He gave the context to that. Did you hear him?
And they must come to IPAC. And so these matters are. They must come to IPAC.
We'll be talking about the IPAC end of the conversation later on, but thank you for your quick reactions. Let me bring in Dr. Osai Kwapong. Now, listening to the different dynamics that we have seen so far, of course, talk about the NDC going to the IPAC as well has come up. And then there is also the issue of, like we've mentioned, a lot of people not having the Ghana card, which could create an obstacle for them if they were hitting 18 and getting ready to vote in 2024. Listening to the General Secretary of the NDC and listening to the Chairman of the NPP's Elections Committee, what do you glean in between?
I think the dynamic you see going on is something that we tend to observe in our political spaces, which is that in my observation, there's a fundamental issue of trust in the Electoral Commission as well. Over the years, and I don't know the trajectory that brought us to this point, but in my opinion, it seems that our two main political parties have come to believe that their fortunes or otherwise in election is a real function of two things: the voters register and the actions or the inactions of the Electoral Commissioner. And so as we go into every election, we have these conversations, we have these quote unquote fights. We put in all of these mechanisms to guarantee the safety and the integrity of the voters register. And then we have all of these questions, concerns, conversations about the electoral commissioner, and particularly who at that time is the chair of the Electoral Commission. So you see some of those dynamics. At play. Any fair-minded person would also tell you that whenever you observe our political dynamics, you tend to see that the ruling party, tends to back the decisions, or at least demonstrate some kind of support for decisions that are taken by the EC, and you tend to see some questions, concerns about that being raised by the opposition.
What do you think the implications?
You can see.
What do you think the implications of that are? Is it to say that every ruling administration, in a way, manages in a way the Electoral Commission, for which reason they are always in support of it? Because, like you're saying, that is a trend. And maybe what do you think we can do? Some have suggested that we shouldn't have the executive appointing the EC bosses. How can we change this?
Honestly, I just don't know how you can change this. Besides, for me, one of the key things, right, is how do you continue to find ways to build trust among contending parties over something as critical as an election? And for me, the impetus is on, and the burden is on the Electoral Commission as an institution to do that. If you look at the Afrobarometer survey, you do see a decline in trust in the EC. And so for me, it becomes a signal for the EC to every so often engage in points of reflection that says, are some of my actions and inactions, even if well-intended, fueling some of these suspicions and trust? Because when you're the referee for something as critical as an election, the last thing you want is these hangovers of mistrust, even if your intentions are clean. I was on Newsfile with Dr. Serbo on Saturday, and I really understood all of the mischiefs that he says. He says, look, the political parties have been contributing to some of these challenges. And so this is just an attempt to try and help and cure some of those mischiefs. So I really understood his point. My only contention, again, is that in administrative procedures, there are unintended consequences, there are unanticipated situations. And so I don't like very strict jacket things that says X and that is it. That are there permissible cases under which you can reasonably make certain exemptions so long as it doesn't violate the letter and the spirit of the law. But when you look at the conversations and the points raised by both the General Secretary as well as Mr. Peter McMenu, you do see some of the political dynamics that we tend to observe as we get close to the election.
Let's talk about some of those political dynamics. So 2 quick ones, and then we can move on. So the bit is that moot question: does the Ghana card determine one's citizenship? That is the question. And legally speaking, by virtue of having a Ghana card, I mean, it's not a document that determines your citizenship. That is a question that has been raised. But on the same tangent you were on before I came through with this, would you find it then problematic that the Vice President touts the Ghana card and how it could be used in election 2024 or moving forward, and then the Electoral Commission, not too long after, comes up with this project and this CI and all of that? Is that part of the problem, and should the political actors beware of such actions?
Yes, it's, again, a national identification system, nobody, at least I would hope that nobody would argue that it's not a good thing to have. Sometimes timing is also key in some of these administrative decisions that an institution decides to make. So again, my contention is that, look, you are 2 years away from an election. We are not talking about a static number, because I hear the narrative that, there are about X number of people who don't have their cards yet. And if we've been able to issue so many cards over the last 4 years, then just the small number left, we can do that in the next 2 years. That's not a static number, because between now and 2024, people will turn 18. People who were already eligible and never registered to vote may now decide that they want to vote. They want to register to vote for the purposes of the 2024 election. So again, for me, until you have that fully regularized functional system, are there reasonable, acceptable ways in which you can let an eligible voter, so long as they can demonstrate their citizenship, registered to vote? And again, there was a report after a registration exercise a number of years ago. And in one of that reports by one of these international observers, which, Dr. Sebo, I shared his opinion on Saturday, was that it's an extension of, the fights that our two main parties also have, right? Which is, it's a numbers game. And so there's always, what are the implications of this? Does this advantage one person or another? Yes, I understand the fundamental issues of, fairness and, voting justice and all of that. But I think built into that narrative is also, are these things going to disadvantage one person or another? And you don't want a system that disadvantages people when it comes to the question of voting. This will go before Parliament. The dynamics of Parliament is very different. Hopefully, through the legislative process, some acceptable amendments can or would be made, and all of that. I hope this doesn't end up in court, but I think Bobby did say that someone may have to seek even interpretation of these things. I tend to cringe a little bit when everything becomes a legal contestation for a court resolution. I think that there are administrative processes that we can use to sometimes resolve some of these contentions.
Bernice here. So let me just find out from you briefly with this National Identification Authority Ghana card issue. So people registered their cards. I remember I had to go through the process, and then now we were told to re-register with the Ghana card. There was some pushback. We know the politics of this, but like I always say, there are genuine concerns. People have genuine, legitimate concerns with their Ghana cards. Now we see this being thrown in, and so the communications minister says, look, I'm not going to extend the SIM re-registration, and then comes to say, well, she had to, what word did she use, Benjamin?
Very reluctantly.
Reluctantly postpone it to September. Now the EC is coming to say, no Ghana card, no vote. Do you get a sense that citizens are being compelled to get the Ghana card by all means?
I think that when you're trying to put in a system in which you believe strongly in the virtues of that new system, you have to find ways to structure behavior that allows people to become part of the system that has long-term positive implications for our development. So I can see some of that happening, right? Even now with financial transactions, I understand that, the banks want you to link your Ghana card to. So those are ways in which you structure behavior to ensure that everybody becomes part. So there's some intentionality about that. The question is, in being intentional and ensuring that everybody becomes part of this long-term plan and good system that we're trying to put in place, what are also some of the possible negative consequences for important exercises like voter registration and one's ability to be able to register and vote? And I think that's where we ought to thread a little more, carefully in terms of the timing and the quote-unquote rush to get there.
Very quickly, so you feel there's a rush? Just give me a yes or no answer.
Yes.
Okay, all right. Let me get to Bobby Banson as well. So listening to the different dynamics that are at play, is there any way we can go about this without, triggering, like I suggested earlier, legal tussles that could mar the entire enterprise? Because looking at the CI and what it is calling for, it would mean that anyone else turning 18 coming through the system would have to use the Ghana card, and then would basically be questioning citizenship or determining it with the Ghana card. Civil society is saying that is not the way to go. What do you see? What is your reading of the situation?
Well, I think that, like we've always had in the past, we should have an alternate means of confirming whether the person is 18 years, whether the person is a Ghanaian, whether the person is of sound mind.
Where alternate means would be what? At a point we cancelled use of the health insurance card. It was taken off, but now we have others that we could use. So which alternative means are you referring to?
We have the passport.
Mm-hmm.
I have always argued that it's I cringe when the Electoral Commission makes the submission that the passport is not a credible source of confirming the identity or otherwise of a Ghanaian. Outside the shores of Ghana, as we have it now, the only accepted means of identifying a Ghanaian is the passport. So if we say that to the rest of the world, the passport is the surest means of identifying the age, confirming the age or the citizenship of a Ghanaian, but within the shores of Ghana, we will not accept that as the most credible source, then it's very inconsistent for me. So yes, I appreciate the fact that the National Identification Authority Act recognizes the National Identification Authority to eventually be the base or the primary source of identification of every citizen, and even non-citizens who are permanently resident in Ghana. But there is a reason why the National Identification Act in itself did not give a timeline. The enabling act of the National Identification Act in itself, authority itself, does not give a timeline within which every person should do that, because they understand it's a rolling process. And then to be able to get that National Identification Authority card itself, there are other means of confirming whether you're a Ghanaian or whether you are, above 18 years, whatever the criteria should be. So I believe that the Electoral Commission should, in consultation with the relevant stakeholders, be able to come up with a means to ensure that in discharging their constitutional mandate under Article 51 of the 1992 Constitution, they do not disenfranchise any person who is entitled to vote under Article 41. My point has always been that under Article 41 is without exception, that a person, a Ghanaian who is 18 years and above and of sound mind, shall be entitled to vote.
Right.
Nobody can take it away from you. The Article 51 that Chairman McMenu made reference to is the means by which the Electoral Commission should realize or should help persons who already qualify. They already qualify by virtue of Article 41 to vote. So you cannot now use the subsidiary legislation to either frustrate or make it more difficult for people to exercise their constitutional franchise under Article 41. So I understand the aim of the Electoral Commission to ensure that we have a very credible voters register. But then in doing that, I believe that they should be able to engage all the stakeholders to ensure that they do not end up disenfranchising certain people. And this is where it comes back to me, to parliamentarians. The CI, per the Constitution, becomes law within 21 days if it is not objected to by members of parliament.
Right.
I think the threshold is 2/3, 2/3 of the members of parliament. And so the members of parliament who represent the constituents, including myself, including Dr. Akakpo, including Chairman McMenu, who may not have, or whose constituents may have communicated their misgivings, their difficulties, should be able to raise these on the floor of parliament and ensure that the CI just do not come out and later they will go on various political platforms to then criticize it when they had the opportunity to do so in parliament and they did not. So as civil society or as ordinary Ghanaians may say what we want to say, our opinion, but at the end of the day, the CI would become law as far as or as long as the parliamentarians allow it.
All right.
So they listen to their constituents and then be able to raise the necessary objections, make the necessary amendments to the CI, which would be late if it's laid in its current term. And then we will see how, at the end of the day, we all have a credible voters register that would be devoid of any suspicion or any means of disenfranchising people who otherwise qualify to vote under Article 41.
Okay, 2 quick points from my end, very briefly, just to wrap from my end of the conversation. The first has to do with the Electoral Commission also talking in recent times. We heard Dr. Bosman Asari, a deputy EC, talking about the fact that maybe even we should be contemplating, in a country of some 30-odd million people, we have, over 20 political parties at play, and that maybe we need much less. There are requirements the parties are not meeting at the district level and all of that. And he talks about challenges even the EC has in terms of enforcing what ought to be. Because guess what? If each party has to, in the over 260 districts, needs a party office, and even is costing them 5,000 cedis a year, let's assume that. What are the dynamics? How many of these political parties can actually afford that? What is the way forward in that direction? Should we be lean, mean, and say, if you don't qualify, that is it, we're cutting you off, to trim down the number of political parties? And secondly, to Asiedu Nketia of the NDC, I think I'll start with you on that point. And then secondly, is the NDC willing to go back to IPAC to address some of these challenges you're facing when it comes to the Electoral Commission? So those 2 quick questions, but the other one to all of you very quickly. I'll start with you, Asiedu Nketia.
Thank you very much. You ask yourself, what is the purpose of IPAC? The point we have made and continue to make is that IPAC was established for a purpose. So if the Electoral Commission deviates from that purpose, then IPAC has no use. In fact, in this current debate that is raging, everybody who has been at IPAC, apart from MPP, all the other parties have come to speak against the sole use of the Ghana card as a breeder document for registration. Then you ask yourself, were all these people at IPAC? And if majority of them says that the thing is no good, how come that the product comes out as the product of IPAC celebration? It tells you that nothing happens at IPAC beyond Electoral Commission coming to declare to you that this is what we have done. So IPAC has ceased to be a consultative forum. It has ceased to be a forum where consensus is built.
But Mr. Nketia, you would admit that while this convention...
If I can land on this particular...
No, I just have to make this point.
We have raised this issue. I
have to make this point, Nketia. I'm sorry to come in. The point is that while this conventional body, the IPAC, starting all the way from the early 90s, has been enforced, the Electoral Commission is not mandated to go by what the IPAC says. Correct me if I'm wrong.
In the past, Electoral Commission has used IPAC as a body for consensus building. You understand how consensus is arrived at. It's not by law, but it's consensus building. When you go and argue things out and good reason prevails that the people want this, you don't go and insist that I still insist on my powers to implement the opposite. If you begin doing that, then it means that the IPAC has lost its significance.
Okay.
So that is the point. So how come, if it is for consensus building, and majority of all the parties that were at IPAC, take NDC out, those who were at IPAC, everybody has come to speak against this position. So is it the case that those parties kept quiet at IPAC and then now come out to say a different thing, or that they ventilated these views and majority of them felt that you could not use the Ghana card alone, and yet Electoral Commission insisted on using the Ghana card? If that is the case, so what was the use of the IPAC?
Okay.
So, and we have made this point, and bodies like the National Peace Council has engaged us. We have explained our position very clearly, put forward our proposals for electoral reform, which has been accepted by Peace Council, and we have been assured that they are going to engage Electoral Commission over these issues so that we can pave the way of solving the problem so all of us can go back to IPAC, and IPAC will function the way it has been functioning. Go and ask the chairman of the Peace Council. For more than 7 months now, Electoral Commission has not given them audience to even go and discuss anything. Besides that, civil society organizations have come up, engaged us. I mean, the leading ones are, I think, IDEC, CDD, and co. They have engaged us. That look, this stalemate is not healthy for our democracy. We want to do something about it. We put our cards on the table. And they say, well, very well, we are going to engage the other side. Electoral Commission has refused to engage them, even granting them audience. So you should know why the problem exists. It is not existing because of NDC's refusal to attend IPAC. It is because of a position taken by Electoral Commission. And that is why I am even surprised that these civil society organizations are not speaking out to put this problem in context. They are not letting the average Ghanaians know the obstinate position that is being taken by Electoral Commission. And they keep on blaming NDC.
Mr. Nketia, so I think your point is made. Just to wrap the conversation, let me just give a bite to Peter McMahon as well, so we can go, just to hear his side. Mr. McMahon, over to you in about a minute, please. We've run out of time. Hello, Mr. McMahon.
I see Nketia conferred on me the Electoral Commission of Ghana. and I dutifully accept it, except that he doesn't have the mandate to give that position to me. And as the lawyers will say, nemo dat quad non habet. He doesn't have the power to confer Electoral Commission on me. And he must be mindful that we want the best for our country by all standards. Electoral Commission, national intelligence, our fight over terrorism, etc. So I'm amazed that on one stand, he will whip his members not to go in for national identification. Then on another, he's urging the Electoral Commission to accept or not to accept the national identification as a form of identifying voters. Nevertheless, this is only a continuous registration. And this has been there in the books of the Electoral Commission since Dr. Afarijan. Continuous registration has been with us, but the methodology is what is being looked at. And if we are in an era where digital and identity crisis all over the world has become an issue, we must focus on that. We should not be asking people to go and guarantee as they wish it to be done. That is a matter that has been dealt with the introduction and heavy patronage of the National Identification Authority process. So they should go and urge their people to go and register with the National Identification and then come to the Electoral Commission for their continuous voter cards.
Finally from me, Mr. McMahon, I'm on the EC's website and I'm going through the steps one needs to take in order to register. The first step is that you need to have a valid national ID. 1 is the national identification card, and 2 is the passport. So what's the big deal now? Why do we want to scrap the passport? Why should it only be the Ghana card? I think that's the question.
We are doing a new constitutional instrument.
I appreciate that, but I'm saying what is wrong with the passport?
For the continuous voter registration. And it harmonizes this one with the incoming new voters who will join the existing register. Okay, Bernice.
Listening to you, sir.
All right. So my word is that we should not make a big case out of this. This is nothing. It's just to make ugly noises. As far as
my question has not been answered. This is the EC's website. We have the Ghana card and the passport. What is so wrong with the passport that we are now taking it out to make it no Ghana card, no registration?
The EC is moving forward with the continuous voter registration, and they are harmonizing both the passport and the national ID. In any case, if you go through the registration, I think about 85% use the national ID and only about 10% use the passport.
But even one person is important, isn't it? Even one person is important.
I don't want to be answering for the Electoral Commission.
Okay.
When Dr. Sribo, then you ask him those questions. But if I answer and you give me the title of Electoral Commission of Ghana, I thank you for that.
All right, we'll have to wrap up the conversation here. But thank you so much, Peter McMahon, chairman of the MPP's Elections Committee. We also had General Secretary of the NDC, Johnson Esiedun Ketia. Thank you, sir. We also had joining the conversation Bobby Banson, a lawyer, and Dr. Osai Kwapong, a CDD fellow. Bernice, so this is how far we've come with these conversations this morning. I know this banter will continue as far as the Ghana card is concerned and as far as IPAC is concerned as well. Time will tell whether or not we'll see the NDC back at the IPAC. But on that note, we'll take a bit of a breather. When we return, more critical issues we'll be discussing on the AM show. Stay.